probably have you have three customers probably. You have your internal customers, the ones that are helping you run your business. You have your prospects, the people you're hoping to place with the right family, and then you have the families. They're your customers too, and each one of them requires some level of engagement, because the better your relationship, the easier the whole thing is for all people. So that's why I thought this would be a good topic, because of many different personas that you have to deal with. So the topic is, the secret to motivation engagement essentially is, what does it take to keep your team and prospects motivated to work with you? It's you really knowing how to work with them. And what is it that your people or these prospects need in order to want to stay engaged and stick with you? So that's going to be the topic of today. With a small group, I think it's going to be easy enough just to make it conversational. So I'm happy to, if you stop along the way, have an example, just go right for it. But so engagement, and that's kind of like the buzzword of the 21st century workforce right now, is what does it mean to be engaged? Because the opposite of engagement is turnover and disgruntled work and people who are not happy, and that just takes your time and resources. So how do we keep people engaged? Well, the first thing we know is that a fully engaged employee is one who is enthusiastic about their work and will act in a way to further their organization's interests. So clearly that's what we want. We want all of our people ambassadoring for us, advocating for us when we're not there. So that's engagement. So when they go home and say, hey, what do you do? And do you love it? Yes, I love it. I love it. So that's what we're trying to achieve. And really that comes down to the kind of person you are to work with. So for today's objectives, just quickly, we have, we're going to assess what kind of working environment and relationships you have, so what is it like what do you think people are feeling and thinking about your arrangement there? Overcoming the despair of expectations unmet. And I will say that all of life's misery lives in the space between expectations and reality. Here's what we expect. Here's what really happened. Misery is in this space right here. So what can we do to bring those two things together so we can live a little bit more, peaceful and contented life? Identify factors that lead to engagement, and then talk about quiet quitting. I'm not sure if you've heard about that term yet, but we'll talk a little bit about quiet quitting and what that means. And then what are some strategies to be self-motivated, the neuroscience that comes with positive and negative thinking. All right, does that sound good?
Yes.
All right. So the first thing, hopefully you have something to write with. So I'm going to ask you to do this, right? So if you're a fast typer, get an open page, or if you have something to write with, and just quickly write down what you think are the ideal traits, or the traits of an ideal team member. What are you looking for? What do you want in your team members, whether it's a prospect or a team member? What do you want from them? Just make a quick list. I'll give you 1 minute. Tanisha, boy, lovely name. Amber Natalie. So for those who just entered, we're writing down what we consider the traits of an ideal team member or prospect. 30 more seconds.
I have a quick question. This would be regarding our office staff, correct? Not a nanny. Is that right?
It could be either, but probably your office staff, but either one, yeah.
Okay.
I'm sure they're going to be different, right? But office staff is kind of like the first line of engagement. All right, so that's time. So thinking about it in terms of your team members, your staff, when you look at your list, the first question I ask is, did you just hire yourself?
Yes.
All right, so oftentimes the ideal team member looks just like us, right? They have our traits and our qualities. They have the things that we value because that's what we represent. Is that true in all of your team members? Are they all just like you?
No.
No. So what then is the challenge to that. So what's the point of understanding that not everybody operates just like you?
Sorry, can you repeat the question?
Yeah, what is it? What can we understand about if knowing that not everybody at the office works just like us? What is the awareness we need to bring to that? Like, what does it mean when we know everybody does not operate just like us?
I kind of say that you have to sometimes meet people where they are. So if it's not exactly the way you would do something, you still have to kind of find a way to connect with them in a way that they are familiar with, because as you said, not everyone does the things the same way. So
Yeah,
that's one way I would do it.
yeah, and that awareness is critical, because otherwise we're like, why are you committed? Why aren't you a problem solver? Why aren't you strategic, or whatever it is that you think you are? But other people are more action oriented. They're more decisive. They're more curious, but they're both good, but we have to remember to think about that. So great way to look at that. So we'll look at this. There's being awareness of what kind of team members we have and the way we engage with them. They're going to fall in this continuum of they're either engaged, disengaged, independent, or dependent. And we put them in this 2 by 2, or 2 conditions across the horizontal and 2 conditions around the vertical, and they intersect to create a reality. And so we have independent and engaged, we have dependent and engaged, independent, disengaged, independent, and disengaged. So they're going to be in one of these 4 quadrants probably. If you could just quickly imagine what would an independent and engaged person look like? What kind of traits are they demonstrating?
High energy.
Thank you, Nancy. Yeah.
Proactive.
Forward thinking. Yeah. Tarnisha, were you gonna say something?
Yeah, self-starter. They're independent, so they don't wait for the instruction, right? They just kind of go.
That the ideal, right? So, but if you could think of somebody who's dependent yet also engaged, what would that look like?
They execute well with clear instructions.
Yeah. Once they know what they're supposed to do, they do it, but they're not necessarily comfortable making some decisions or actions without direction. Okay. Then we have independent and disengaged. What would that person look like?
Would that be somebody who just wants to work alone and doesn't really want to work with others, doesn't play well in the sandbox, but is productive?
Yeah, definitely could possibly look like that. They may or may not be productive. Really depends on how they're feeling at that moment, but everything else I think is something at the fair assessment. And then the last one is dependent and disengaged. What does that look like? Dependent and disengaged.
Maybe an inability to execute on what you've communicated.
Yeah, so I'll tell you, I just took a 16-day raft trip. I don't know if you've done that. So it's something my family's done several times. And I'm writing a book in my head. It's called Lessons in Leadership, also known as 16 Days Surviving Friends, Family, and Perfect Strangers at the Bottom of the Grand Canyon, because there's a lot of work involved, And every day, every morning, you're assembling all of your stuff and putting on a raft, and it's getting strapped for the worst possible scenario. You get to the end of the day, you're taking everything off the raft and doing, it's like just tons of work. It's a lot of cooperation required. And we had people in all of these quadrants. So it doesn't matter where you are, this is what you see. So this is essentially what it looks like. You had it right on. So independent engaged is who we're looking for. They're self-directed. They challenge leaders, like, hey, I was wondering, maybe we shouldn't do it that way. What about doing it this way? Dependent engaged, again, they'll do what you ask, but they're not necessarily finding ways to do it. The most dangerous person on this continuum is the independent and disengaged. They may be sabotaging. They could be resisting what you have to do. And then, of course, dependent and disengaged, they're like the jellyfish. They're just kind of going and doing, and wherever the tide is taking them. They're not somebody that you can necessarily count on, but they might be able to do some tasks. And essentially where they are thinking in their world, right? Independent engaged, they're loss averse. They want things to work. They're winners, they're competitors. They just are trying to make things happen. The dependent, they're risk averse. They're afraid of something going wrong. They don't want to make a mistake. They don't want to be valued that way. Independent, disengaged, they're managed averse. They don't tell me what to do. Don't tell me how to do it. They don't like to be managed or controlled, especially if they're no longer engaged in your mission. And then, of course, dependent and disengaged, they're effort averse. They just don't want to work. They're just like, whatever it takes, minimum effective dose. So those are the kinds of things. So quickly, depending on what you may or may not know, where do you think where would you plot your team members on here? The majority are, do you see any red flags?
Independent and engaged.
Excellent. That's what we want them to be. Anybody see any red flags? Ooh, I have a person that might be in this other quadrant that I need to focus on.
We've definitely had them.
Yeah.
The dependent, the disengaged, independent, and disengaged.
Yeah. And so going to the theme, like knowing what it means to work with these people, what do we have to do to move them into this top box here? You know, so if it's a compliant person, they're risk averse, what are some small things we can give them along the way to help build their confidence, give them some real clear category, you know, direction so they can start just growing incrementally in their confidence. So that's something you can do for the risk averse people, like just give them opportunities to get stronger in whatever it is, like just build their reserve power. You know, the compliant people, the effort averse, you know, they're looking for efficiency opportunities. And the reason for this, it's like, might be getting to know them. Maybe they're looking for more of a, maybe they're stressed out. Maybe they're going through school. Maybe there's something else that's going in their world that's making them pull back a little bit. It might not be who they are as an individual always, but it might be some unique condition. It might be that they had a bad engagement with somebody, like they kind of checked out, but they still have some affinity towards the company, but they don't want to leave yet. So it's a little bit of conversation. It's the independent and disengaged people we have to be a little bit worried about. They tend to be strong in personality. They may have been challenged and shut down. So like, fine, I have something to offer, but you're not asking, so I'm stepping out. So in order to get to the bottom of these two, you know, the communication and the dialogue is important, because these are anchors on your team. So you need to figure out what you can do. When I say anchors, like keeping you from moving forward, not holding you steady. So opportunities to do that. So then the question is, what are reasons people do not perform to expectations? And the first thing we need to do is to make sure we have clearly defined expectations. And so this is the whole expectations unmet thing. Sometimes, so this is going to lead to the quiet quitting thing, but see, the minimum shouldn't be the minimum if the minimum isn't good enough. Okay. If here's what's expected to do your job, and as long as you're doing that, you're good with us. When you exceed expectations, you're awesome with us. But if you're the expectation meter and that's where you're going to be, then that has to be acceptable. You can't allow your judgment of that to interfere with your ability to understand what's going. Because if you want more from them, you have to increase what that expectation is. You know, so we have these minimum compliance standards. Are they, if the minimum standards are going to frustrate you, are they really the minimum standard? So your leadership opportunity here is to make sure that what you accept and what you want might not be the same, but you must accept what you've said is okay. So, and that's what I'm saying. 2 + 2 doesn't equal anything that's not 4. So yeah, I say I want this, but what I really want is this. And we can all agree that we want the highest performing team members, and you should just figure that out. So that is where we get into trouble. What we want from people is not always what we've established at the beginning, and it's not really lined up with where they are right now. So that's why it's really important. So in order to have appropriate standards, we have this. So there's anytime you give somebody a project, a task, a performance standard, it should have these 4 things involved: the results that you want, the timeline, like is that every Friday, by the end of the quarter, starting Monday, what is the frequency or the deadline start date? What resources are available? Your resource, YouTube, here's a manual, here's a buddy, here's whatever it is, here's the budget, here's the money you have to operate. So let them know all the things that they have available to be successful. And then the converse of that is the hard stops, the constraints. You may not have overtime. You may not go past this deadline. You may not submit this without my approval. You know, whatever it is, make those really clear so they don't get so the independent and engaged person doesn't take a leap too far, causing you a little trouble. So when you have those things, these 4 steps, 1 + 2 + 3 + 4 = 10. That's what we want. And so if you're a visual learner, that's what this graphic is over here. This is the objective, the project, whatever it is you want from them. These are those 4 steps are these. This is the box they get to be in. The white space is ideal. That's perfect. That orange channel, that is what we call the reasonable allowable margin of error, also known as the learning curve. Okay. So if it's day 1, they're not going to be perfect in that box, but anything within here is okay. Anything outside of here is a problem. So that's why we call inside learning curve, outside course correction, inside coaching, outside conversation. All right. So, but this is going to be a good exercise for you. If you think that you have a person that's not, you're kind of frustrated with what they're doing and you're starting to think, well, did I really make it clear what I wanted them to do? This is a chance to kind of have a one-on-one and, reset those expectations, make sure they're clear and they're all agreed upon. And that would be, ensuring that expectations are clear. What do you think about this? Does this help you a little bit? All right. Nancy, do you want to say something?
No, I'll just say it was an interesting concept of how to work with the different types of personalities.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and I think we'll have time to do something. I'm not sure or not, but so that leads to quiet quitting. Okay, so if you have heard of the term quiet quitting, just raise your hand or put your thumbs up as a reaction on the screen. So what does it mean to you? How would you define it? It's like, what does quiet quitting mean?
Somebody who just kind of fades away and just doesn't really make an announcement. You just maybe can't reach them anymore. They're not responsive. They just kind of fade off into the distance.
They've stopped doing their job, is what you're saying.
Oh, okay. Then no.
No, I'm asking, is that what you said? No.
No. Okay, so you're saying, so they're still actually with you, but they're just no longer work. Okay, then no. I was thinking it was something totally different.
No, you were not wrong. I misinterpreted what you were saying.
Oh,
Like,
okay.
call them, they're not answering kind of thing. So, yeah. So I'm sure your teams are not huge. You probably have a strong awareness where everybody is at any given time. But there are companies right now where they're going through transitions. I was just listening to a person talk about how she's frustrated because nobody knows she's there.
Oh,
And she wants to be available, but nobody's asking anything from her. So that's the example of quiet quitting, somebody who wants to do more, but being underutilized. So, all right, fine. I'll just, and they might just actually leave the job, because burnout is not always a function of having too much to do. It's often a function of working under capacity. I mean,
It's funny. I'm sorry, didn't mean to interrupt.
No,
I just want to share an experience with that. My son is just getting a new job, and that's exactly what happened to him. He had quiet quitting, although he did go to management and say, these are my ideas and how can I help, and was engaging. They weren't listening to him, and he is now quiet quitting and now has a new job offer.
There you go. That's one example of how that works. Another, they're not all of them like that. Another example of how quiet quitting is that, especially coming out of the pandemic, people put a little bit more premium on a work-life balance. And what they're doing is their job. They're not coming in first and leaving last and working as hard as they ever did. That mindset of being the first one, ambitious, work hard, get noticed, kind of give it all you got kind of approach towards work isn't what it used to be. And so now what we're seeing is they're just doing their job. They're going to come in, they're going to do their best work, and then they're going to go home. They don't necessarily go out of their way to do more than they have to because they're trying to achieve this work-life balance. And that was definitely an outcome from the pandemic. So those are examples of quiet quitting, one or the other. And so those symbols down the middle of the screen, those are symbols of currency. You know, everybody has what I call their money, but money is never money. Okay. People want a car. That's a thing that they want, and they pay for it with their money, you know, the tool that they have to buy their car. But cars are very different. I want safety. I want a Volvo. I want something for my kids. I want a minivan. I want a sports car. I want to look fancy. So that's the object. That's what they want. But their currency is, why do they want it? I want to look good. I want to feel good. I want to, whatever that is. So money is the thing, is the currency, the emotional need that we have to feel valued and to get what we're looking for. And so for some people, money is certainty, or I'm going to stop sharing my screen. I'm going to put this slide up that I didn't think I had to. All right, never mind. So there's this factor called have you ever heard of the love languages?
Yes.
Okay, so love languages essentially are, we all have a language that there's like gifts, words of affirmation, quality time, whatever that is. And the concept is, there's a way that we feel loved, and so as a result, that's the way we give love. But then we realize there's 5 different languages, and not everybody speaks the same language. So what we want to do then is like, well, what is, and so but you know, we can't talk about love in the workplace. HR gets itchy and, you know, twitchy. So we talk about the value language, and there's a value language that is an acronym called SCARF, 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 SCARF. And so each of those represents a value language that are different depending on who you are. And so I'll just tell you what, and you can look this up online. It's not my concept. I just like to share it. It's the website is like, I think, neuroleadership.org. Or you could just look up SCARF, the acronym. David Block, I think, was the creator. But it's essentially, and the acronym, S is status. So if your currency, your money is status, those are people who are looking to get recognition for their work. You know, they want corner office, they want employee of the month. If you have somebody that's asking you often for affirmation, or look at how, you know, how am I doing, like seeking, you know, affirmation, they could be status oriented. Put them in charge of a project, let them lead the next meeting, let them do some prospecting, and, you know, just let them feel important for the work they're doing, and then you will, you know, they'll feel valued. That's how you can work with them. All right. The next one is C, that stands for certainty. People who like certainty really love this, right? People who want certainty, they want to know exactly what's expected of them all the time. They might be that dependent and engaged. They're looking for some direction at all times. They want to know the size of the box, and then if you give them those things, their anxiety levels go way down, and then they feel valued and they can work productively for you. The next one is A, it's autonomy. And so those are people who would rather work independently. They're the people that, you know, you give them a project and they're off and going. They don't need any more direction. They might come back to you for some tips and things. But the important thing about people who have autonomy as a driver is that if you don't give them enough direction, they'll be doing something anyway, and it might be counterproductive or going down a different path. So make sure that your autonomy people have enough of the clear goals, but you don't want to get in their way. Because they'll feel like what feels like micromanagement to an autonomy person is just barely enough instruction for a certainty person. So as Nancy said at the beginning, knowing who people are and what they need, that's a great example of it. And if you are an autonomy person, you probably think everybody else is, and so you kind of want to just give them the orders and step off again. Well, that's a luxury of leadership. Not everybody else is like that. And then we have R, which is relatedness. Those are people who want to feel like they're part of a family. They want to feel known. They want to have connections. They want to share with what they're doing on the weekend. They want to know what you're doing on the weekend. They recognize birthdays and things like that. So those are people who just want to have a relationship. They want to make sure that they really feel known and valued by the people they work with. Some people just want to go in and leave. That's not the related person. The related person is, acknowledging all the milestones of the office for all the right reasons. And then the last one, F, is fairness. These are people who just want to make sure there's accountability, that there's transparency, that there's if you have a diversity, equity, and inclusion initiative, that everyone's being considered. So there, and people who are operating with fairness, you give them those things, and they know exactly. They're just looking for transparency and accountability, and if you give them that, they will stay with you. But the minute you do something that they lose faith and trust in you, that person no longer feels a value, and they might check out. So those are some examples of people's currency, their money. So I'll let you read through this, but engagement. What do people want from work? And this is going to, again, I think this will apply with your prospects as well. And you can teach them these things as they go into their family, but just read through this list and, which is the one that's, is most interesting for you. Any surprises? Do you agree with this list?
I do.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And one thing that's interesting, most people think salary is going to be the number one. But as we just went through, money is not what people want. Money is what gets them what they want. So if you want a boat, then maybe money's going to matter. But if you want time with your family, then you want time off. That's your money. You want balance. So it just depends. So, so I just, so if you look at this list, these are opportunities for you to figure out what can you do? How can you bring this to your team? Knowing that the number one thing is recognition for the work they're doing from you or from the leadership. Because the number one reason people will stay or leave for a company is their relationship with their immediate manager. Because people don't work for companies, people work for people. And nobody will understand what somebody's going through more than that individual who they directly report to. Nobody's going to know where they got, trying to help a parent aging, get the, care that they need, or a new grandkid, or whatever it is, it just depends. So this is important for you. All right, so let's look at this one. I'll let you look through it. The reasons for quiet quitting, and see if there's any red flags for you in this one. When you read that list and you recognize the influence you have, which is the one or two of these things that you could maybe start doing more of to have an antidote to your quiet quitting risks? So in other words, you realize, you know what? I'm really asking my people a lot. I need to find a way to lower their stress. Or you know what? I never say what a good job you're doing. I should probably give them some more recognition. What do you think might be your opportunities for avoiding quiet quitters?
I think it's communicating with your employees on a one-on-one to see where they are.
Mm-hmm. Do like number 5, maybe?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Anyone else? How about you, Tarnisha? Which one will you do more of?
I was thinking number 8, because that's something that, in the interviewing process, as well as bringing on new employees, is something that should be discussed and also displayed a little bit more of what the organization's vision, mission, and purpose is to ensure it aligns with that individual. Because I think because that's happened to us before, if you hire someone and they don't really have a clear understanding of what they're getting into, that would definitely cause quiet quitting if it doesn't align with what they believe or they're committed to.
Yeah. Because people, especially with the work that you're doing, I mean, you really have to
Correct.
believe what you're doing. It just matters. If you're just looking for a job, this is not your line of work, right?
Right, exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And just making sure that people, what that is, and each of you represent a version of a market response. You want to work with toddlers, you want to work with teens, you want to work with, vacationers, you want to be a live-in, there's all these different things. You all represent a market segment, so you got to get them to understand what that piece is. So how about for you, Evan Joy? Did I say that right?
You did. I had the same answer actually, number 8, but I would also say number 10, particularly for the in-office staff. We just hired a new nanny recruiter, and I asked him that question, and he said opportunity for growth. And so now my wheels are turning, thinking about where he can go as a nanny recruiter. So yeah, definitely creating opportunities for at least perceived career growth. I don't actually know what the answer to that is. Yeah, but 8 and 10 would be my top 2.
Okay, because if we're a company of 5, there's only other positions, right? Yeah, so how can you make him feel like there's opportunities? Maybe he has got an opportunity for scale or something like that, give him a chance. But yeah, that's good if it's good. All right, so this is just something that you should, just keep in mind. These are the reasons why people would do it, and making sure there's no red flags in your team, or on your prospects that would make them want to leave. All right, so what's interesting? So the power of positive thinking is really interesting. So the question is, what do you want from work? What it means, like, what do you want to feel when you're at work? What kind of experiences do you want to have from that is a question. What do you want from associates? What do you want from the people that you work with and around? Do you believe in the power of positive thinking? And of course, the myth of sticks and stones. So I'll just throw that question out. What is it that what do you want from your work? And that's an honest question. You answer it. What do you want from your work?
Personally, time and financial freedom and impact.
Yeah.
I would say those are my top 3.
All right, those are pretty clear goals. I love it. And what about the people that you work from? What do you want from them?
Their best effort, excellence.
To be just like me, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. And how would you get that then?
I've learned a lot with the people that we've hired. And so I definitely am a lot more intentional about learning what their priorities are and reframing the company's priorities within their priorities, and also being flexible on how I want things executed to best and align with them. I also think that doing my best job of restructuring their tasks in an arena that they feel they're strongly suited in. So like allowing them to implement more of what they think is important in the role while taking care of the company's needs.
That's good. So it's like there's leadership lessons. People want to live in a world they help to create. So it means anytime you can invite them to be a part of the solution, then nobody wants to see their idea fail. So if you give them an opportunity to participate, then they're going to be much more behind that initiative, whatever it is. Let's go look at that.
That's a great point.
How many of you believe in the power of positive thinking? Not just as a mood enhancer, but it actually has an impact. We do, Tarnisha?
Of course.
Jade?
Yes.
Yeah.
I very much believe. Oh, sorry.
No.
Oh yeah, so I very much believe in the power of positive thinking because I'm really into tarot cards, I'm into palm reading, and yeah, so since I believe in those things, I am into zodiac, so I believe in the power of positive thinking. And the more positive you are with the way you think, somehow it affects everything else. Like, I'm always very conscious with what I allow inside my mind because what I allow inside my mind, it goes into my heart, and then what goes into your heart can turn into actions, and all your actions is like throwing a pebble into a lake, and then boom, there are like, there's this impact or effect. Like no matter how small a pebble is, there's always those ripple effects. So yeah, I will always believe in the power of positive thinking because sometimes all we have is just faith and hope, because sometimes you could lose, I mean, you could lose recognition, you could lose material things, you could lose finances, but then no one can take away your faith, no one can take away your hopes and your dreams. Sometimes it's those intrinsic things that I believe that I can always keep for myself.
Yeah.
That's what I believe.
Yeah, and you were right on. And even though we feel like it just makes us feel better, there's actually neuroscience behind what's happening there. Because when we are in a positive place in our brain, that goes to our prefrontal cortex right here, and that's where it actually expands our capacity to solve problems, to be creative, to see things more possibilities and less obstacles. And the power of positive thinking, those release those endorphins and those dopamine, transmission things in our neural synapses, and it just it builds stronger neurotransmissions with that one action. Conversely, negative thinking has this problem where it shuts down the brain. It shuts down the brain. Ooh. And it makes it harder for people to understand what you're doing. You are unable to manage your stress, and it does the exact opposite. And the thing that's interesting about our brains as humans, they are predisposed for the negative because that's survival. We don't need to be happy to survive. We need to remember what went wrong before, so we don't go back to that same lion's den again. So it's like a self-preservation mechanism. But the thing is it just, it activates different parts of our brain, and it truly does have, a neurological impact when we can focus on positive. And the myth of sticks and stones, the thing that's interesting is words have the opportunity, can be relived over and over and over again in our brain. We can relive it. The bad words from our boss. I mean, I'm sure right now you could all think of an example of where you had a bad conversation and it's still with you. Somebody said something hurtful to you and it's still with you. So it's not, sticks and stones may break my bones, but words will never hurt us. That's the opposite is true. Give me a broken leg any day over words that will wound my soul. So we need to be aware of that, how powerful those words are that we give them. And so, for example, what we have here with glass half full, glass half empty, negative thinking, it slows down our coordination. It makes it difficult to process solutions. It hinders creativity. It impacts the left temporal lobe, which is the fear-focused one. Having problems with food and memory, affecting food, mood, memory, and impulse control. That's pretty big stuff. Conversely, people who have positive thinking, they synaptic connections, we've learned recently that the brain is plastic. It's not static. We used to think once we had a neuron and that was it. Well, now we know we can build more. And so positive thinking makes that happen. Productivity and cognition goes up. We can pay attention. We can focus. Improves ability to think, analyze, and comprehend data, and quicker problem solving, creativity. I mean, and the good news is it begins with the decision. It begins with the intention to try and move our brain towards that glass half full mindset once you've decided it matters to you. So that would be an example. And it's 100% a choice. What's interesting? So I've noticed that because I do a lot of these in-person workshops, and as time goes on, and they're all very interactive, they're not lecturing, they're very interactive. The number of times I have to repeat myself for the instructions just keeps going up and up and up. Like, so what page are we on? What do you want me to write? Where are we going to go again? What, the number of times I have to repeat myself has gone way up. And I believe it's because with technology, the way everybody's so connected to technology is that our bodies might be in the room, but our brains are always somewhere else. Our brains are always somewhere else. And half the stuff that we're consuming on technology, it's really hard to avoid the rhetoric of the divided landscape that we're in. And if somebody says something that's challenging your deeply held belief, you're angry about that, or you're hanging around the people who are reinforcing your deeply held belief and they're, vilifying the enemy, whatever that looks like. That is all this negative thinking side of our brain, which is what is leading to like this shortened mindset and attention span. It's just getting really, really hard to get people together. I mean, both literally, cognitively, physically, it's hard. And so that's why, if this matters to you at all, there's lots of things, lots of ways you can do it, but how can you start bringing positive thinking into your daily experience? The way Engine Hire found me and the workshops I do is I'm an independent contractor besides being a coach for Dale Carnegie. If you've heard of Dale Carnegie, he wrote the book How to Win Friends and Influence People. And you can download this in the app. It's 100% free. You can have a little golden book on your phone. If you want to look at something good on your phone, it would be this. And it's 30 principles on how to just be a friendlier person. Because one of your most powerful leadership engagement tools is being likable. People want to work for people they like. Like think about when was the last time you went out of your way to do something for somebody you did not like. And being likable makes it a lot easier to achieve the goals, because in theory, nobody can do the job that you're doing without the cooperation, the contribution, the support of other people. And that will go a lot easier when you're more fun to work with. So you're that positive person. So I would just recommend you get this golden book. And it has things in there like smile, use people's names, make the other first person feel important and do it sincerely. Avoid arguments. Don't tell people that they're wrong. Be sympathetic with their ideas. Own your mistakes. All of these things are these principles that you can live by that will help you achieve that goal. So the first set of 9 principles that you'll see when you get there are right through here. So I'll let you read through these 1 through 9. Nancy, I just have to say, you look just like your voice. Way to be congruent. I'm trying to Nancy.
Nobody's ever said that to me. That's interesting.
Yeah. It was a positive vision, so it was a positive voice, I guess.
Oh, good. Thank you.
So as you read through that list, which is the one you do without even trying? It's the thing you do. It's who you are. And what is the thing that you probably need to get a little more practice in? You need to apply it more often.
I think I always do 5.
Mhm.
And 6 is always trying to remember somebody's name. I've tried all kinds of techniques. It's probably an age thing too. Just to try to remember the person's name. I go through the alphabet in my head or try to associate them with something that I can remember their name. I meet a lot of different people.
Yeah. I mean, you can remember them for the moment. Are you expected to remember them next year when you run into them? Probably not. There's actually some cognitive purging there on purpose, because like we do have a lot of information. Sometimes I learn things really well for this moment in time, but when I no longer need it, the information is kind of like a data dump. So yeah.
But when you run into somebody, they remember your name and you can't remember theirs.
Yeah, well, there's that.
So I was like, sorry, I can't remember your name.
Who else has what are they willing to share? What do they do automatically, and what is the one they can do better at? I have a joy.
I do 2 very well. And I would say 3 would be something that I don't do very well.
So that's essentially when you talked about getting the buy-in and the vision, you know, what's in it for them. So that's something I heard of that most popular, the WIFM, WIIFM. That's gotta figure that out. How about you, Tarnisha? You were gonna say something?
Yes, I was going to say 5, I do really well. And also 7 and 8, I tend to do very well. However, 1 is something that I need to get better with because I'm so mission focused that if I sense someone is kind of going against the grain and doesn't want to do things the way I think they should do them, then I can be, and I'm not mean, you know, because I'm always going to, I don't know if you know the sandwich analogy. So I always lead with something very positive and but I am, you know, I am going to let you know if something you're doing is kind of off or I'm concerned about. So that is something I could get
And
better
I
with.
would say I wouldn't even put that in that term. I would probably put that as just corrective maybe or directive. That doesn't mean you're criticizing, condemning, or complaining. You know, for me, I think about it like, why are we doing it like that? You know, shouldn't we be doing it this way instead? I learned that about myself very clearly on this Grand Canyon trip I started with. Was like every time we got to the shore, I'm like, wouldn't it be better if we put the buckets over there? Because that way the people would be tripping over, they're trying to get to that. You know, my brain is always working to make things better. And it wasn't welcome because I'm not a rafter. I was along with my son and my husband's trip. I was just along for the ride. I'm not a rafter, so I didn't have any credibility. So every suggestion felt like when, you know, I was criticizing, condemning, and complaining the way they do things. So, but also note that when Dale Carnegie wrote this list, number 1 was actually written as much for a way not to outwardly present, but not to inwardly present, because we can be our own worst critics. So just remembering to be patient and give yourself that grace that you need as you learn and, you know, become who you are trying to be. All right.
Good.
So when you go back, here's a formula using that recognition. So remember, I said the number 1 thing people want from work is recognition from their leadership. So this would be the template. You would say, you know, Tarnisha, one thing I really have I learned to value about you is your positive presence. The reason I say this in the few short sentences that you've had to say have been a tone of enthusiasm and warmth. And it's made me feel like I can talk to you about anything. And that amount of time. So I could do that. And you could do that with everybody. You know, the reason I say this is the important piece. So it would be like, you know, what's the attribute you want them to know they're doing well? And then what is the evidence? Otherwise, it's just a bunch of hollow out of, you know, good jobs. Because what gets rewarded gets repeated. When somebody shows up late and they never get corrected for it, that's a reward. So they'll keep coming in late. If you tell somebody you think you love the way they're solving problems and working really hard to work with the new nannies, well, guess what? They're going to keep doing that. But they don't know you feel that way until you tell them. So this is your formula for giving good recognition. And it also is doing what we talked about before. It's activating that prefrontal cortex part of your brain, which is a positivity thing, which is enhancing your creativity and all those other good things that happen. So it's good for your brain to start thinking about this, and it's good for your team to start feeling this way from you. And just one parting thought here is, I love this quote when I came in: employee engagement is an investment we make for the privilege of staying in business. Because without them, we can do nothing. Because gone are the days where everyone's doing everything they can to keep their job. We're in a place right now, we're doing everything we can to keep our people. So the pyramid is sort of upside down now. All right, so that's what we have for today. Finished a little bit early, but it's kind of, anybody have any questions or thoughts you'd like to share before it's over?
It was a great webinar. Thank you so much for putting it on. I'll definitely be taking a few of the things that we talked about and working to create something for parents to implement to help them identify their nannies' motivators and how they can best accommodate to ensure a great long-term relationship.
That is a great transferable application of this. And it's kind of one of the things I was thinking about, because your families need this. You need to know what they want and you want them to know what your nanny wants. So it's a good triangle of support.
Yeah, that's a really good point, Ewan. I hope I'm saying your name right, but yes, that's a really, really good point. Yeah, for our families as well. Thank you so much for putting this on, Brenda. Thank you.
Sorry for the last one, but I'm glad you made it for this one. Nancy or Jay, do you want anything after? I'm hoping Kimber and Natalie were able to get something out of it, and they're doing some good work while getting some good nuggets at the same time.
Yes, thank you.
Learned a lot today.
Mhm.
So go ahead, Nancy.
I just said thank you. I took plenty of notes, and we'll download the Dale Carnegie. I think that's great. I am actually a little bit different than some of the other participants. I actually have a dental business, dental staffing. So this information can be shared with any type of organization. So that's why I kind of jumped in.
Yeah, it's definitely something that any engineering, education, nannies, whatever it is. I have a nonprofit. I run a nonprofit of my own, and I practice this there too. It does not matter the industry. It matters the people, because every industry is actually made up of people. Can't think for that.
Thank you.
All right then.